Alrighty, and we're hot. Welcome everybody to the second episode of The Backdoor Show, starring myself and
your narrator, Carol Baldwin. And now it's time for one of your favorites, The Gray Zone. Granger Sasso, what's happening, buddy?
Nothing much, living, breathing above ground.
There's the basics.
Yeah. Right.
I'm alive.
You asked what's up, that's what's up.
Sustaining.
I got it. Listen, man, I like minimalists. You know, I want to keep it simple. I don't want to get into too much opinion, which is really begs the question, why do we have this segment? But anyway, let's talk about the election. Have you watched any of the debates?
I am personally not a debate watcher, and I actually am pretty strongly opinionated on debates in general.
Wow, well, I'd like you to share that vernacular.
Yeah, it kind of stems for me from the concept of what a debate is nowadays. I don't think it's an actual debate, and by any sort of actual metric of a debate, it's not a debate. It's more of just a sort of a sideshow or some kind of like segment for TV. It's not really a debate. No discussions are really had. No problems are actually addressed. So I think that it's more of just a spectacle than it is actually what it used to function as, which is like a format for people to discuss ideas. So that's kind of, at first glance, what I don't like about debates.
Yeah, it's interesting you would say that, because a debate by definition would mean the two of them would go back and forth between each other. Don't you think really, though, if we went WWE Raw, it would be a lot more interesting? Just think about it for a minute. If they pulled the jackets off and they had like wrestling tights on, and we put really big, oversized, so you couldn't really hurt each other too bad, gloves, and just let them beat the shit out of each other. Who would you take? Who do you got? Biden or Trump?
I don't know. I think if Trump can get him quick, he might be able to with like a swift knockout. But if you have to go for anything more than 30 seconds, I think Joe's got him.
Joe's, he's 78, I think.
Trump's not too
He's
far
going to take the youngster.
him.
He's going to take the youngster.
Septuagenarian. That's a new word for you guys, unless you already know it.
Wow.
They had posted this clip of Joe running around the White House and doing like push-ups with Barack Obama.
Okay, wait.
When he was still president.
I'm still focused on septuagenarian. Somebody who's in their 70s.
Not fast.
I believe so.
Is that what it means?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you said if anyone knows what that was. I'm breaking the word down, going.
It's a Latin expert.
There was at one point in the Democratic run for presidency between Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, and Joe Biden, there were only septuagenarians running for president on the Democratic ticket. So that's where we're at in politics.
Do you think that you're a young man, you and your brother, and I think that's one of the interesting concepts of this show, is that you bring a 60-year-old man in that has lived a pretty interesting life, traveled, seen a lot of things. And then you guys come in and you do clearly look at things differently than I do. Your experiences up to this point, and where you see that you and the world is heading towards versus what I saw. How does that make you feel as a 23?
Mm-hmm.
23-year-old man looking at these two candidates and them being in their mid to late 70s to run the greatest global power in the world. So does that bother you that they're that old? Is that a factor to you in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a factor. From everyone that I've talked to around my age, my friends, about this upcoming debate, they think that as a young person who's pretty left-leaning, not hard left-leaning, but I'm pretty left-leaning on a lot of issues, and a lot of my friends are as well. It's sort of just a function of being young. A lot of people are left-leaning. Everyone that I've talked to so far is like this race is more of a less of two evils type situation with Joe, and the fact that they're both so advanced in their years isn't a knock on them personally, but where their priorities lie are definitely not in the same level of priorities as us on issues like healthcare or issues like education or the environment. There's clearly just a slight disconnect in the priorities between the different generations and how they view these problems. So I think that going forward, our demographic of people and how they're represented are going to be fundamentally different with the priorities that we have versus past generations and generations like yourself who are older. And the further that you get away from one generation, the more different their ideas are going to be. So I think that is definitely a sticking point with me and a lot of the people I know.
Interesting. What about you?
I feel like it's become very toxic for people my age. It becomes us versus them, instead of actually debating their policies or what they represent or what they're looking to do for this country. It just becomes about he did this and he did that and he said this and he said that, and if you agree with him on that you're sexist, you're homophobic. So it becomes a very toxic environment, especially in college.
You know, as I've grown to know people that are very like uber wealthy, you know, the top 1%, and not that I have that many friends that are in that category, but I've met them. And I actually subscribe more to the theory of, I don't believe being the president of the United States really is the power that you think it is. I believe that there's a group of men, predominantly men, that meet a couple times a year that pretty much run the whole show globally. And there's and it's a business for sure. I think the intriguing thing for me about Trump in the beginning was he wasn't a career politician. So, and you can tell that by some of his absolute idiotic comments and things that he does sometimes. But I do know about what it takes to become a president. I've been around people that have supported members of my own family that have been very active in the Democratic Party in particular. And so you got to figure that there's guys there that are pulling him aside as he's tweeting at 11 o'clock at night some garbage that he's writing. Now, is this guy actually Harry Houdini? Is he getting your attention right over here just for a second while he's slipping the key to the safe in his pocket that they're about to put him in? You know, so, because he can't be that dumb, you know, to write some of the things you write. So I wonder, while we're concentrating on a wall that's really not even being built, and we're concentrating on some of these issues, what are they really doing and getting away with, and you know, or circumventing the authority that's necessary to get those things done. So I can't imagine that he's that stupid. So maybe he's smarter than the people around him in this generation of social media and stuff, and how much we monitor what people are doing now and how much we see they're doing. You know, that just didn't exist. You know, it was fascinating to watch the Vietnam War, and it was fascinating to watch the first Desert Storm, you know, in the early 90s, because they brought a war into your living room. You know, you actually had live cameras while people were blowing things up. It was insane. Now we have live cameras on what politicians are doing, reality TV. You know, it seems like as soon as it happens, you know about it. It's a completely different world now than it was. And I have to say, I was speaking with your mother today about it, and I said, and for you who don't know, Griffin and Granger's mother is my sister Jane. And I said, I feel sorry for these guys. They'll never know the freedom that we knew, you know, and I mean that. I mean, just traveling, you know, I mean, forget COVID, just traveling border. You wanted to go to Canada, you drove across like a turnstile. You didn't even need a license. They were like, what are you coming here for? Okay, go ahead. You know, and I mean, the world is so specialized and restrained. It's sad. And now, you know, you add COVID to it, and I have to say that I firmly believe that COVID was a plan. I think that the economy was doing really, really well, and that was probably one of the only things that was going well for Trump and the administration. But the economy was flourishing. We were doing pretty well, and then COVID gets let go. And I believe it was intentionally let go in Wuhan with a plan to cripple the economy in the United States. I believe that. I absolutely believe that now, as I look at the evidence on it. Are you in a position, either one of you or both, that you would talk about who you support in the election and why?
Yeah, I would be in a position to talk, sure, yeah.
Who are you going to vote for?
I'm probably going to vote for Joe. And again, going back to sort of the sentiment that I've kind of discussed with some of my friends, I tend to view it as a lesser of two evils type of situation. I think that my main issue with Trump is the direction in which he's taking the office and the use of rhetoric that he has. I think he's degrading the quality of conversation that as Americans we tend to have around politics. I think he's taking it so far to the extreme of pandering and appeals to emotion and decoupling from our understanding of the world with science and with experts in different fields, that I think he's heading in a direction that is undesirable in the long term for Americans. But I think that Joe Biden is also not an ideal candidate. I don't think that his reforms that he's proposing for a number of major issues for people my age are going far enough, and namely healthcare, as well as education, spending in the military, and I mean, between all of those things, he's more or less a centrist by pretty much any definition, and he's even considerably conservative by a lot of global definitions of what what it would be to be on the left of a lot of these issues. So I think from where I think that we can derive a lot of value in having centralized healthcare, subsidized education, spending less on the military. I think both of those candidates don't go very far in addressing those things, but Joe is further to the left on those opinions than a lot of, obviously Trump and a lot of the other individuals that would have been running. To be honest, I would have liked to vote for Bernie, but I'm really, I still can if I want to, but it's not really a vote that would mean very much in anywhere. I mean, being in Onondaga County too, it's the vote for Joe or for Trump is not a huge thing because of the politics of this county. But
so you feel the politics of this county are such that Trump's going to win no matter what?
No, I think Onondaga historically is pretty blue. But I mean, upstate New York is very, very red in general, but Onondaga County typically goes blue. It's more contentious than say like Tompkins County, but it's not as historically red as a lot of upstate New York counties.
What about you? Did you register?
Yeah, I am registered to vote.
So what are you going to do?
I'll be honest, for a while I was thinking about not voting.
Is that a protest or?
It was initially, but for me, I feel like that is just disrespectful to other countries that don't have those opportunities. But for me, man, the kind of things, I mean, listen, I've heard some absurd quotes from Joe, but it's just the stuff that I've heard come out of Donald Trump's mouth that just kills me. Like the stuff he said about women, the stuff that when I was watching the first debate that he didn't say about race, that concerned me. They asked him to denounce white supremacy. Just couldn't get the words out. I denounce white supremacy. They asked him 2 or 3 times. I can't support somebody like that. I personally can't. I don't care what his policies are. That's my end point. I can't back somebody like that.
I have to say that I never considered more, and I won't divulge which side I'm going to yet. But I will say this. I've never had to consider before the vice president and their role in it. And I believe at 74 and 78 years old, it is an absolute consideration. And based on reports, COVID for Donald, Joe, you can see when even in the debates, when he gets a little longer in his sentences, it's hard for him to stay focused. It's hard for him. He's a 78-year-old man. And I believe it would be difficult, the pressures of being president, to last for all 4 years for him. I think it's going to be difficult. I'm not saying he can't do it. So the most accurate way for me to do this equation is to say it this way. If Trump decided he wasn't going to run before we started this whole thing for the 2020 campaign, and Kamala Harris said she was going to run, and she ran against Mike Pence, who would you vote for president for? Now, I say that because she has no White House experience. I believe, and this is not fair, but I believe as a woman, she's probably at a disadvantage in a man's world, although there have been world leaders before. Golda Meir. In England, we've had Prime Minister.
Margaret
Thatcher. Yes, Thatcher wielded it with an iron fist. Just ask the people down in the Falklands when they messed with her what that looked like. Her response was, as decisive and epic as any world leader, man or woman. So, we knew what you were going to get with Margaret Thatcher, but she was well seasoned going into that. If I had to pick, and I'm a Democrat, if I had to pick between Kamala Harris and Mike Pence to be president of the United States after 4 years as the vice president, I would pick Mike Pence, I believe. Although, I would probably give it more consideration. I don't believe that woman is ready to run the entire country. And for the first time, I'm really considering whether or not either one of them is going to make it, through 4 more years. I mean, if you look at side-by-side images and listen to Donald Trump speak from the year he went into this and was elected to now, he looks like someone threw him in a dryer and spun him for about 6 hours. I mean, he's spent, man. I mean, that's got to be a terrible job to constantly be defending yourself and make more idiotic comments and blah, blah, blah. I also, but for her, I just would say you're not ready. It's like putting a guy up on the lacrosse field, or at a high level when he's just not ready. And then you're gonna find out what it's like to play in the big show. I think she's ready to be vice president. I think, but I worry, what happens if Joe strokes out? I'm thinking about that now.
It looks like it could be a reality. I mean, the way he's been talking.
Even in the debate, he gets kind of caught up and he does these weird, where I identify them as neurological things, like with his mouth and he gets tight. And I'm looking, I'm going, is he all right, man? A proper amount of blood flow going up there right now? Because that carotid artery looks a little jammed. So, yeah, I mean, there's so many factors to take into consideration. I don't know the country will survive another 4 years of Donald Trump, but he's got some really interesting ideas though, the way he does stuff. As much as he sucks for the environment, he's amazing for the economy. If we didn't have this coronavirus, I mean, records were being set under this administration. I mean, this guy was really killing it financially. Even now during Corona, Wall Street is just lighting it up like a pinball machine. Now, that's not the everyday American that's doing it. If we could find a mix of him with something to do with social justice in any way. All right, I want to move on to one more thing I want to ask, and then I got some really funny emails from the last show. Gray Zone questions. Let's talk about healthcare for a second. Now, I've traveled to over 100 countries in the world. 100. And we're one of the only places in the world that doesn't have a social medicine type of program. I'm missing something. Canada's great. Why don't we just do that? Why don't we just say there's a flat tax, this amount of money goes to it, anyone can go in? In Canada, when I was on a movie once and I tore my knee up, and I said, who's the best surgeon? So they had a guy who was like the Toronto Argonauts football team, the Canadian team in Toronto. He was their surgeon. And I said, well, I want to go see him. And they went, yeah, it doesn't work that way here. You have to go to a regular doctor. Then he sends you with a prescription for a radiologist. Then that radiologist gives you a prescription for an MRI. And then the MRI guy reads it and says, oh, I think you have a tear. We're going to prescribe you. And I went, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I'll pay cash. You can pay cash up there. You wave some money at them up there, and guess what? It's no longer social medicine. You can go to whoever you want, but you pay out the ass for it. So it does exist. There is private insurance. But to cover the average person, I'd be willing to pay a little bit of money to know that my neighbor and my family had coverage, but that everybody in the country had coverage. We're like one of the only places in the world that has money that doesn't do it. What am I missing? Why do we not just want to move into a system that's more socialized and help everybody?
Yeah, that'd be a question for Granger. I can't say I know enough.
I mean, there's a lot of kind of like different narratives you can kind of tap into that try to address that question. And there's like sort of the narrative of healthcare industries that lobby against it. There's insurance that lobbies against it, gigantic conglomerates of hospitals that are like extremely monopolized. Like the hospital system in America is like very, very centralized and borderline monopolized, and like they lobby pretty hard against it. So like, I think there's a lot of corporate interest. There's a lot of bureaucratic interest in keeping our medicine private, but that's not the only reason why. I think just Americans aren't really aware of the feasibility and the benefits of socialized healthcare. And I think that's something that's kind of catching up as we get along, and as more people work in things like the gig economy. If they're not having full-time employment through one employer where they would qualify for medicine, they're realizing that having socialized medicine, or at least an option for socialized medicine, is really important to have, because it puts you in a tremendous financial burden if you are not covered by healthcare, and then suddenly you break your leg or get in a car accident or fall down a flight of stairs and you're strapped to 10, 20, 50, $100,000 worth of medical debt, or God forbid someone gets cancer or some type of protracted disease, where now you are more or less going to be indebted to insurance companies and healthcare companies, healthcare providers rather, for decades, possibly your whole life. And if you're uninsured, and that's something that is a growing problem, not a shrinking problem, under the current sort of system of healthcare that we have in this country. And I think more people are waking up to it. And these were a lot of the sort of like rallying cries of camps on the left under Bernie and under other types of ideologies on the left. And like, that's something that I think is creeping into the popular consciousness of America, because of the reason that you said. Like, we are the only developed nation in the world that does not have an option for socialized healthcare. And I think that's a shame.
So do you think that it's less profitable having no centralized healthcare?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it literally would remove, it's introducing a competitor to that environment that they wouldn't have had otherwise. Like, in effect right now, they are operating without the competition of a social healthcare plan. If introducing that social healthcare plan was a competitive offer for someone in my position, and I took that would effectively be taking away business that they wouldn't be getting otherwise. So yeah, I think it would be much less profitable for them. It's against their interest to have that.
Well, remember the pros and cons of it too. I absolutely agree with Granger. You take X amount of people. When you open a second gas station down the street, people have the option, if they're coming from that direction, to stop at that gas station on the way home. They're not going to go past their house to the one that's close to their house anymore. They're going to, because the gas prices are just not going to be that different.
Yeah.
So it's kind of what you're saying, but remember, when you get into a social medicine program, you're also talking about long lines, long waits. You want to get a surgery next year. You know what I mean? Like, it can take a really long time to try to catch up to that, and you're probably not going to make as much money because you're not commanding that independent money as a surgeon. So the competition level, when you become the young star who fixes Tommy John's shoulder, and they start calling the surgery Tommy John surgery, and you want to get surgery done by him, it's $1,200 an hour. You want to get surgery done in social medicine, it's $250 an hour. You know, so there's not that free range anymore. You know, it's got to fall under a certain category. And I think one of the things that actually could make this more prevalent, the need for it, is a pandemic. So what you're going to find out now is, if this thing flares up the way I'm predicting it's going to, you're going to have people begging that there was a federal, amount of money that was available to the average person, because whatever the treatment is, it's not going to be dynamically different. So there's going to be a certain amount of stuff, until they come out with a vaccine. Trump, what did he drink? One little cocktail a couple of times, and he claims that he was cured. That makes me beg the question: was he ever even sick?
Yeah, no, and the whole concept too of actually the underpinnings of medicine in the country too. This goes to your point about possibly a lower standard of care. I think that is an option. It's possible that there would be a lower standard of care. That does happen in socialized medicine programs, but I think that the option of getting strapped to medical debt is worse. And another huge issue that is really largely not talked about in American politics is how medicine is evolved in this country. A lot of the research that goes into developing new assays, new pharmaceuticals, new surgical techniques is publicly subsidized. So the money that goes to the NIH, the NSF, though that is publicly funded money. So it's coming out of your tax dollars to fund research, which is a good thing. It's a good thing that money is being used to do those things from the public. However, the people who stand to benefit from it are drug companies who are in a position to commercialize that technology. Mm-hmm. And if the public doesn't take a stake in it, if the NIH or NSF doesn't take a stake in those companies, which they typically don't, they publish research on these things, and people can use the intellectual property to commercialize whatever they want. Then you're effectively subsidizing private companies who then turn around and sell it to you at a profit. So you're kind of getting hosed on both ends, so to speak.
Well, and you bring that up when we're talking about the pandemic and how that would affect the possible need. and push people in privatized healthcare to probably being actually proponents of it, because it is stereotypically those who are more socioeconomically down the totem pole of the ladder that would utilize more of the social medicine components. So with that said, you have to wonder about the convenience of this pandemic when the vaccine comes, and how protocols to using a vaccine are all going to be just overlooked. I mean, a vaccine is usually not given. It's 5 years or more of testing before you'd actually inject a large number of people with it. And human testing is 3 to 4 years out from the time the conception of the vaccine itself. And we're going to waive all that because it's an emergency, supposedly. Would you take a vaccine if they offer it in the next, Trump says, before Christmas?
I think I'd only take a vaccine if the FDA were to approve it in some capacity. If it were some type of unique scenario where they approve it with caveats that it was expedited through X, Y, or Z phases, I think I would still take it. But I would not, under any other circumstance, any other agency declaring it safe, I would only accept the FDA's measurement of safety versus all the others. I think that
I want to be the person that has the vaccine, and I want to inject Bill Gates with it. If I can inject Bill Gates with it and see that he takes it first, I might consider it. But no, I think there's no way. Listen, I get it. I get that we're in trouble, but there are so many other things we could be doing before we rush to judgment of vaccine that we're going to find out does something to our DNA or something crazy. I mean, and I don't trust them. I don't trust them that they're not going to put other things in this standardized vaccine that are going to monitor where we are. They're going to be they're capable of a lot of really crazy things. And if you look at what's going on in Africa right now, oh my God. The World Health Organization is injecting people with stuff that's killing hundreds of thousands of people over there with experimental stuff. And Gates has a big play in it. Look it up. I mean, it's pretty crazy. And so I worry about rushing to judgment with this. I realize it's dangerous. Is it dangerous like the Black Plague or cholera or something like that, where hundreds of thousands of people a week are going to die? No. Is it dangerous for older people because of their immune systems are compromised due to their age, and that this pandemic could indeed disproportionately kill people 60 and up that have predispositions like diabetes or heart problems? Or yes, all those things are true. But I'm not getting that vaccine.
Yeah, I can say the same. I have no trust for that. Growing up in this day and age where I feel like every day something new is being uncovered about something that went on in the 70s, the 80s. At the risk of sounding selfish, I'm not at risk to die from it. So I feel like I'd rather stay at home and isolate myself than get that vaccine and go out and potentially spread it.
Yeah,
go ahead.
For sure. If my mother gets coronavirus, she's probably not going to make it. She's not. She just wouldn't be able to fight off the respiratory effects of it at 90. And
you never know. She's lasted this long. You never know what she could get through now.
It was interesting when she had her bypass. She was in the post-op, and she was, they cracked her rib cage. They opened her up, and so I'm going to go in there, and the doctor's there, and he looks at me and he goes, "Now you want to be real quiet, and you can go in there when she comes out and talk to her. Don't get her excited or emotional about anything. Don't make her laugh." So, and she's like this, trying to open her eyes. And she looks up at me and I said, "Are you fucking kidding me?" I go, "You're going to have to drive a stake through this one's heart before you get rid of her. Don't worry about it." And she goes like this. And she starts laughing because she heard me say it. And it was super painful. So here's my poor mother holding her just recently sawed rib cage. And she said, "I'm cracking her up. You're going to have to drive a stake through this one's heart before you get rid of her." And that was 25, 30 years ago, and she's still over there. "When are you coming over and making me brownies?"
Oh my God. The story she's told Granger and I, oh my God.
We should get over there with a camera.
Oh yeah.
We should get like 50 hours worth of stuff.
Carol's Corner.
We'll
something.
Do Carol's Corner.
Oh, hell yeah.
Carol's Corner on the show.
We got to be careful. We might get Carol in trouble.
All right. So there was thematic stuff. So I got 2 dating questions that came in for the Gray Zone. Okay.
Oh boy.
Holly from Las Vegas writes, "Hey, that guy's kind of hot. That Gray guy. Is he single? I'll send some pictures. Would he want to go out? 25 in Vegas." So, what's the story, Gray? Are we pimping you? Am I sending you out?
Yeah, you know, as much as that
Girl's
sounds
super
nice.
cute too.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the solicitation to send pictures, you can hold off on that for now. Thank you. I'm
right.
I'm good.
Well, she asked, "Are you single?"
I'm not single. I've been in a relationship for
Okay,
the
which
past
brings us to our next
3.5
question.
years. Yeah.
Okay. So Stan from Sacramento, California. Would Granger consider dating a guy if he was single? If he's single, would he consider dating a guy? Open-minded, Stan in Sacramento. So Stan wants to know.
No, sorry. Don't swing that way, buddy.
Out.
How dare you?
Stan out. Holly
I know.
out.
In 2020, how
Sorry.
dare you?
I know. I'm sorry.
Man, bro, it's Stan. He's really cute. I'll send you a picture.
All right, Stan, send him my way. All right.
Yeah.
Good.
Maybe I can hook Stan up with Holly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they still love me.
They know. I like it. So, are you gonna stay on for the whole show? You want to stay on?
Yeah, I'll hang out, sure.
All right.
Love it.
So let's move on.
Getting into sports corner. What are you gonna do?
Well, this is how I roll. The boys were downstairs. We're going over segments we're going to do on the show, and he says to me, "Oh, you know the Tampa Bay Rays and the Dodgers and blah." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, Tampa Bay Rays." Their dad's much more of a baseball fan than me. If I'm not watching a Yankee game a couple times a year, I'm not watching baseball much. People got to move and hit each other and do things for me to be interested.
Get CTE.
Yeah. I can watch basketball. It's fast. But baseball, if I'm not at the game at the ballpark, I don't know. I'm just not. I can't sit there and just watch it. So, so we talk about Antonio Brown has been taken on by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which I predicted in social media before the season started, again 2 weeks ago. And unbeknownst to the boys, AB is a friend of mine. So he's telling me that we're going to do, so I FaceTime Antonio, and he's making a shake in his kitchen. And I went, "Yeah, you're going with Brady. I knew." We're going. And the two of them are looking like, "Holy crap, that's Antonio Brown." So I said, "Man, that's how we roll in the show, bro." So we're thinking about trying to get Antonio, although this would probably be a bad week with him going to Tampa Bay. But that is huge news, and there's social ramifications. Antonio's had, some documented problems coming out of Pittsburgh. Then when he went to New England, accusations which turned out to be not true, which I knew weren't true. But this is a big move for a perennial All-Pro. He really opens the game up for Brady. I'm going to go out on a limb right now. You ready? With the acquisition of Antonio Brown, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at least go to the NFC Finals, if not the Super Bowl this year. That's how good he is, how much of an impact player he is. I mean, he will stretch that field for Brady so much because you gotta lay off him or he'll blow by you, even at his age now. And his workout regime, that's we've been staying in touch with each other. We'll call each other while we're both in the gym. And I got my crappy little gym. You should see this guy's gym.
Oh, what? It's got to be insane.
He's got a field with yardage on it, with the parachute behind him, and he's running, and and I got like the 2 dogs and some weights. And
you got the Rocky gym for sure. The Rocky 4 gym in Russia.
I will crush you, stallion.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking about more was watching the Clemson-Syracuse game today. And Clemson decided to open the field, the stands up, and pack the place. So they had a full 100,000 people sitting in very close proximity watching this football game.
That's nuts.
I was dumbfounded.
Yeah.
I was dumbfounded. I mean, a majority of them are young college students. A lot of people in that area, that's the equivalent to their pro team in South Carolina, which I don't believe has a single pro team. So Clemson is their pro team, that and the University of South Carolina Gamecocks. So, I get the ravaging, the need to see their team, but during this time, with the pandemic going up, I think 80,000 new cases in the U.S. just yesterday alone. 80,000. So
that's insane.
Well, when that 80 becomes 160, 320, 740, and that's coming. So I found it incredible that at a university they would allow. Now both of you guys have played sports at university. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, to allow 100,000 kids and people from the town to be in the stands, knowing what we know about the spreading of this virus, and these people were not masked. They were not a lot of them. I was dumbfounded.
I can tell you from looking at my phone, all my friends that are at school right now, one of my good friends who lives in Virginia, he said on FaceTime to me one day, are you guys wearing masks up there? I'm like, yeah, everybody is. You have to. He's like, not in Virginia. Nobody's wearing masks. And the whole DMV area is like, I don't see any masks going to the grocery stores. Nobody does it. And then I'm on Instagram looking at people's stories. Everywhere. People are at my friend's birthday and there's 50 people in a room without a mask. They're at a bar and a club. No masks. It's like people, seriously, this past weekend has frightened me. It's like everybody just forgot about it.
Well, and in places where it's shooting back up, like in Texas, it's really bad for some reason. Oklahoma this last week, it's just blowing up. But where they have been hit before, and they were really strict. I watched after the Lakers won, and they must have had 100,000 people outside the Staples Center, just on the street and in the giant parking lot. They were squeezed like sardines. And I thought, how are they letting that happen right now? So when you hear what I said about this pandemic, and that I've blogged about, I've advised friends about, I'm in the PPE space with this mask that I represent, and I tell you, I would not be surprised at all if 20 million Americans, we only had 7 point something million in the spring, if 20 million Americans don't have coronavirus by February, I think it's going to be really bad. We did not take the precautions. Now, remember, I think that what's going to happen is far less will die. We understand what to do. We definitely have had the first wave of it to be experienced in it. That will not create more hospital beds. That will not create if the numbers just blow up like I'm talking about. So, and it will not also change the fact that the risk factors are still going to remain the same. Older people are going to die, but listen, they're talking about 320,000 now is the number that they keep hanging on the president and different people in healthcare and when they weren't ready and blah, blah. I'm not even going to get into that conversation, but don't be surprised if that number becomes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. When you add that many more people having it, I think it's going to get bad. I think it's also naturally weakening. I think that's the nature of a virus like this. It mutates a little bit, it weakens. But make no mistake about it. This is this virus. There was SARS. There's going to be another one. There's going to be other stuff like this going on. As long as you have man intervening to do these types of things, which I believe Wuhan was. I absolutely believe it was developed by men and in a lab. And whether or not the motive was that they did it to release it to stop this or affect this or whatever, I'm not going to get into the conspiracy aspects of it. But it was definitely man-made, for sure. And this is not the last time, for sure. So does it anger you, Granger, to see a Clemson football game and have 100,000 students and fans in the stands, half of them not masked, and them for a little, or is it more they should have the right to do whatever they want? Where do you stand on that?
I think it's disappointing. I think that it's ignorant to. I think it's disappointing in the way that it fails to extend understanding of the risk outside of yourself. So I think for a lot of the people that were in the stands there, they're probably not in the demographic of people who are at risk for it. They're probably pretty young. They're probably pretty healthy. They're probably, for all rights, going to, if they do get the virus, survive it. But they are, just as anyone else is, a vector for the disease. So they have the capability of spreading it. So if they don't themselves get affected, dramatically by the virus, which there is the possibility for, a slim chance, they could spread it to someone else who is much more likely to have tremendous impacts. They could die. They could be severely incapacitated. They could rack up a ton of debt from having to go into hospice care. So it's disappointing in the fact that you don't have an understanding for the needs of people outside of yourself, and to understand that a football game, which can be enjoyed in your own home, is somehow more important than the marginal chance that you could get sick and the not so marginal chance that you could get someone else sick by it and really, really wreak havoc that way. So I think it's pretty sad.
For me, like I said, I would not get the vaccine, but I'm not going anywhere. You can ask Granger. I've gone, to one of my friend's apartments every other weekend or so, but I've really been set up here. I think it's a great time for me personally. I've had a rough year last year, but I think I'm really getting centered and feeling good. And everyone just keeps talking about how they want to get out and they want things to get back to normal, but that's just not the reality of what's going on. I think people just need to get more focused on, work on yourself a little bit instead of going out. You don't need a football game and hanging out with your friends to start feeling better. I don't know what everybody's obsession is with this need to get back to normalcy. I think that, like Granger had said, there's so many people that are probably going to continue to die because of it. I think it does come down to selflessness. That's really the pinnacle, I think, for it.
I think people have a natural, when you, it's like sending someone there's people that can make it in prison, and there's people that just aren't cut out for it. And the ones that struggle greatly for going there are the ones that actually are punished more than those who want 3 hots and a cot and really don't care because they were lazy to start off with. But people that are ambitious, they don't want to go to jail. They don't want to go to jail. And the pandemic, in some ways, I did an interesting recording on my porch one day. I just turned the camera on myself on a Facebook Live and hit live. And I turned on God, I just wish I could rest a little bit more. I'm so tired lately, and I don't have time to really get the right amount of sleep because of how much work I'm doing. And you know what? I just keep walking by those projects that I want to do at the house, like the side of the 3-car garage that has all the wood and the doors and stuff. And if I could just get a dumpster here and clean that up and build that fence up there like I wanted to for 2 years and have it. And the garage, the garage is full of stuff and I'd like to get it out. I really wish I could spend more time with my kids. They're gone at school. And when I travel as an actor, and I went on and on about 4 or 5 more things. It would be nice if I was around my wife and I could blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? You can do all that now. You can do all those things. You can actually eat a little bit better and work out even with a set of bands or something at home and write something you want to write and spend more time actually with your family, making meals together and doing things, celebrating your relationship with God, and stuff and getting stuff done around your house with no excuses as to why you can't do it anymore. So all that stuff that you bitched about that you couldn't get done this is like, to me, a big God eraser. I've said this before. You look at the effects. The greatest and best air quality in the city of Denver since 1962 or something, they're saying, because there's no one driving their cars. People aren't going to work 9 to 5. They weren't during the spring, and the air quality got exponentially better. The oceans are filling back up, not back to what they were, in 1980, but they're filling back up with crab, and they're filling back. People can't work on boats. They're not essential. Some of them are considered dependent, but you get the point. There's grasses growing around rivers because people aren't in Yellowstone trampling on them, which are bringing back animals and toads and certain things that haven't been there in years, and bringing back birds that kill those and eat those toads enough because they're actually there now. So there's an amazing ecological effect of what's going on around the world right now because of the pandemic. But getting people to see what the great opportunity that's involved here, things that you could work on, at home, and how you can affect your nuclear family, I've chosen to look at it that way because I firmly believe we're heading back into a total lockdown again. It's going to be a Sasso family Christmas here, man. There aren't going to be a lot of people coming by, I don't think. There'll be a time where we're going to start shooting this show via me at my house, you here, because we're just not going to be able to take
for that,
risk. Yeah. I mean, it is. Okay, so I want to ask you another question. There's a disproportionate number of African Americans in inner cities that are getting this virus. Why do you think?
I'm not a virologist. I don't know the dynamics of those areas at all.
Inner city, the number of African Americans that are getting this virus versus the number of African Americans there are versus Caucasians, it's a disproportionate number. What are we 11% or 12% African American in this country, and yet the numbers are just crazy of how many African Americans are getting it. And I figured out why. Do you know? I think I figured out why.
Yeah, I can't say I know why.
I believe because you're talking about small proximity and multi-generational that are living in apartments. Let's face it, almost all of New York City are apartments. So you turn around and you take grandma and grandpa, or grandma still lives there with the father and the mother, or even one parent, and 4 kids. And those kids are still going out. They're not in school. They're running around. They're bringing it back in. Mom or grandma gets it, or grandpa gets it, because they're in this close proximity to each other. And so I believe it's because they're in a densely populated area, and there's more multi-generational living situations in the African American community in big cities than there are whites. That's my guess.
My mom has done physical therapy in the inner city of Syracuse for 5-10 years. She did that for a long time, and that's something that she said in pretty much all the patients she worked with were people of color, and she said they always had a great-grandparent, a grandparent there that watched them, a bunch of kids, cousins, aunts, uncles that were in and out. So at least for my understanding of the city of Syracuse, that does make sense.
Yeah.
I think too, just the proximity, like, and possibly the use of public transport, that could also be contributing to it. Like if you're an individual who doesn't have the ability to work from home, and you are an essential worker, and you have to utilize transport within an inner city, if you don't have a car, then you probably have to be using public transport of some kind, and that could be like a spot at which you could be exposing yourself to the virus, which is unfortunate.
Can I throw a curveball question?
Bring it. I'll hit it out of the park.
Because I've been racking my brain for a while. I'm not a virologist. I can't say I've done numerous hours of research. But why not everybody that's susceptible, that really has pre-existing conditions, why don't they just lock up their doors, and everybody else that's not just go about their day?
Well, there lies the question of why does someone take their grandfather to the Clemson game? You know what I mean? Like, what do you think?
To track Pappy.
This is my diabetic 70-year-old father. We're going to go see the game.
Listen, if you live with somebody that is susceptible, then the onus is on you. But for somebody like me in our household, I'd go get an apartment with my buddies. If there were 4 or 5 of my college friends that could live together, what's the point of us quarantining if I'm not going to be spreading it if I'm not going to be living in close proximity with someone where I could spread it? What's the point of us quarantining?
Well, here's part of the problem. Part of the problem is there's a 14-day incubation period, up to 14 days. So here's my sister-in-law and your aunt, China. And China has a friend over, and the friend didn't realize, and then 2 days later started getting symptoms, and she immediately started backtracking who she saw, and she said, China, I'm not feeling well. China got it. China gave it to my brother Billy. And so Billy got it. Billy's still symptomatic now. He's like, back still hurts, but he didn't get blown out by it. Now, there's a significant difference if Billy gets it or I get it, because I'm a type 2 diabetic. And they say that's a big one. That's one of those ones you just, for some reason, you don't want to mess with it. So, I'm yanking my kids voluntarily out of school Monday. They're not going back. And so, I had to explain it to the girls. I said, girls, listen, if one of those guys went down from Syracuse to go watch Syracuse play Clemson, and he comes home and he's the father of one of those kids, he may have it for 2 weeks and not know it. He may give it to you, his daughter gives it to you, you bring it into the house, and a week from now, I'm going to start not feeling good and not know that it goes all the way back to the guy who was an idiot to go to the Clemson game. And that's how this virus works. I believe a number of people have had it and didn't even know they had it because their symptoms were so weak. And it can really vary. Yeah.
Let me pass this over to Granger, because I still look, I'm not against masks or anything like that. I'm happy to put hand sanitizer on my hands. But for somebody like you and your kids, like, yeah, if you're susceptible and the numbers are really high, stay home for sure. You're vulnerable to it. But why am I staying home if I have such a low death rate of this? Why? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, that goes back to what Granger was saying, I think, about what is your responsibility to that? What would that look like if you were out with your friends and you came home and you gave it to your father?
That's what I'm saying. If my father is susceptible to that, I'll stay home. But I'm saying if I lived in an apartment in Syracuse with a couple of guys that are my age that are all healthy, what?
Sounds like he's lobbying to get an apartment, doesn't it?
You're paying. I'll get one. But
sounds like he's getting an apartment.
I'm just saying. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here of like why should I do that? Why not grow carrying capacity, or not carrying capacity? I'm sorry. What's the term I'm looking for? Herd immunity. which again, not a virologist, not well studied on this. I'm just asking this to play devil's advocate of why should I not?
Look, I think that the number one reason why anyone should stay home is to not become a vector for the disease. And that, I mean, the scenario in which you're describing where every person who's susceptible from it should be staying home and stays home and doesn't do anything. I don't think that that's necessarily a very realistic, picture of how it could go down. I'm not claiming that you defend that position, but like the position that you stated, I think that that's not a realistic scenario. There are people who are immunocompromised or who are in a susceptible category for this disease that are not in a position to stay home. They either have to go out for work or they have to travel for their work, or they're not able to stay quarantined effectively. So that's like one reason why. And another reason why is the burden of the healthcare system in the United States due to this virus could reach a point that it's like people who would otherwise be healthy and people who would otherwise survive this disease if they were getting healthcare would not survive it because they don't have access to it due to the number of people that are getting it. So if you had gotten this disease at a point where a lot of other people were getting this disease and there were huge numbers of people suddenly getting this disease, there's scenarios where a hospital can only tend to so many people. They have to literally triage people based on who's in the most trouble. So that effectively leads to poor outcomes in healthcare. It's going to be meaning that people who could have gotten care won't, and that could lead to more people getting sick and dying. So I think that's one of the main reasons. Number one is don't be a vector for it. Don't spread it to other people. Two, it's probably not very realistic to keep people in their home for a long period of time. And three, you need to literally flatten the curve. Like the dynamics of how this virus spreads and who has it at what time are important because it informs healthcare outcomes.
Gotcha. Well, I don't support that stance. I don't mind staying at home. But I kept racking my brain about it, and I was talking with our mother about it, who's a healthcare professional, and I feel like we're already spending so much money on this. It's like, I feel like you could set up systems where those people could get food that's clean. You could have access to your work because a lot of people are already working via computer now. So, I mean, maybe I got to talk to somebody who knows a little more about this.
Here's the obvious answer that we're not really talking about. So why wouldn't I go? Why wouldn't I this? I don't have anybody in the family that's in our country, ages 15 to 24, 383 people have died, 24,621 have died globally. In our country, 25 to 34 years old, 1,628 people have died, 50,306 have died globally. So the answer is, you don't have to have a predisposition after anything. You just have to be really unlucky in the low end of the pendulum because guess what?
I get it.
People are dying at 20 years old, 50,000 globally. So that's
it's a significant amount. It definitely is.
It's a pretty good number, you know. I mean, so even at 400, whatever the number is in the nation at that, and as that goes up 10 more years, the numbers jump exponentially. They're big. I like that word today, exponentially. What was your word?
Oh,
septuagenarian.
Septuagenarian.
That's the word of the day.
That's
tweeted us that in a proper sentence, and we'll give you a shirt.
All of our presidential candidates are septuagenarians.
Let's wrap up. Let's do a wrap up.
Okay.
We're gonna leave it Gray's own choice. What do you want to wrap?
Gray's own choice.
Yeah, let's go.
We're opening Pandora's box.
Rare that we let you have
Pandora's box here.
Whoa, holy
Want to go
crap.
back and talk about Stan?
It's been on his mind ever since. You can tell.
It isn't bothering.
It's got a twinkle in his eye.
Oh my God, no. I mean, I don't know. That's a wide open end. Something that's been on my mind a lot lately is what was it? I was talking with my friend Chris about this earlier. Yeah, it's just like at the stage of life that I'm in like being 23, just graduating school, having a lot of not time on my hands, but like having now kind of like a little bit of money in my pocket to like spend on things and have time to spend in different ways that I want to. Focusing on what are problems in the world and deducing what are problems in the world is something that's been like taking up a lot of my time and something that I have been talking with my friends a lot about lately. And I don't know, it's just been on my mind a lot lately. So to you, the sextagenarian, Daniel, now sextagenarian, I got to put it to you as, how did you come to a point in your life where you say, I'm working on a problem that I think is impactful. I think that my contribution to this problem is meaningful and that type of thing, because I'm starting to get to a point in my life where like my ability and skills to actually make an impact in the world are growing to a point where they're like becoming meaningful and are important enough to like warrant consideration. So I'd put that to you.
Well, yours, I think, is more envious, because yours comes from brain power and the hard work that you've done. Mine came from having had the gift of having a relatively successful, comparatively to the average actor, acting career, and so I was able to utilize the fame portion of it. You know, and I mean, I'm not delusional. I wasn't Dustin Hoffman or anything, but I was on primetime television for 10 years, and I, you know, have done some pretty interesting things, and was able to be use that celebrity status in a positive way. You know, you look at, we just recently got a report from my mother's breast cancer research fund, which the women in the family probably did a lot more legwork than the boys did. But the fund latched on to the fame of the brothers in the family to try to generate money to find a cure for breast cancer. And so I found myself in the 90s, you know, flying to the underwater basket weaving contest, you know. And, you know, and you know, and my mother would go, yes, they're going to donate $50,000, which, by the way, we just missed that. So,
oh God,
let's go. Let's go.
This
to
could
that
be
right,
dangerous.
Let's go right to that right now.
Yeah, Carol.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
We'll get Carol on. We'll get Carol on.
She call in.
Oh God.
Was that you calling me, dear? Carol?
Honey.
Hello?
Hello, dear.
Hi, honey.
Where are you?
I'm with Griffin and Granger. We're shooting our podcast, and we're bringing you on the show via telephone.
Are you over at Jane's?
Yes, Mom. I'm at Jane's. That would be Griffin and Granger.
But you know what was on last night? You were on TV for
Jeopardy.
the theater thing.
For the theater thing. What was that? Was I arrested? Was I?
For burning a theater down.
Mom, say that again.
You were on TV for down in Syracuse. What was it? Whatever it was down there that you went to. You were on TV last night.
For the film festival?
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm going to enter my promise to PJ in the festival. Mom, you have millions and millions of fans. You have Griffin, Granger, and I recording our show right now. Do you have any closing words
Are you coming here to stay all night?
I'm going to come see you, Mom, very shortly. What I want to know is, do you have any...
Going home or are you going to stay?
Mom, I'm going to come stay, Mom. Do you have any words of wisdom for our audience, Mom?
You know, Elias coming over. Lorna's coming and the two girls. They're all going to stay all night.
Okay. Well, that's great, Mom. But let me ask you one more time. Do you have any words of wisdom, pearls of wisdom, to give our millions of watchers right now?
I have words of wisdom. Keep your chin up. And I love happiness as a choice. I love that. I say it every day, every time something happens. Like if I don't hear from you, I can say, well, happiness is a choice, so I'm not going to be mad.
Happiness is a choice. I love that, Mom.
Isn't
I love
that
that.
beautiful?
I love that.
That is beautiful. And on that note, Mom, I'm hanging up on you. We're out.
Ready.
Happiness is the choice. How do you end better than that?